Hello and welcome to Geeky Guys. If you're into geeky things, we're the guys for you. Just a quick note before we get into the video for today. If you go onto the Patreon site in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, there's a couple of exclusive videos that I'm putting up there for patrons. So if you would like to become a patron, now's the best time to do so. You're going to get more exclusive videos per week and per month and whatnot. So go and check that out. As always, all links are in the description. Hello and welcome to this video today, guys. Today, as we continue on our journey into Strixhaven, we're having a look at the Silverquill Statement deck. Here today, this again another precon deck upgrade guide. So it's an interesting deck to look through and try to figure out what you're going to do with this sort of a deck and where you're going to go with this sort of deck. It's quite an interesting build. I wasn't too sure about how much sort of stuff they'd put into this deck and how much sort of stuff would really synergize. I thought, a lot of these decks that they sort of, this is a really new archetype. I didn't really think that they'd put this much sort of stuff into all of these decks. So, they've put a lot into these decks, new stuff that's basically helped out building new archetypes. It hasn't completely built new archetypes. You're still a little bit thin on some of these things. But certainly also Strixhaven itself has helped out, adding some stuff for different strategies and whatnot. This sort of group hug, group slug sort of style in the Orzhov colours. But we're going to get right into the video for today, and we're going to start looking at the stats of this deck here, as we tend to do always on these. It's always good to have a bit of a look at what's in these decks and see where we're at, So 10 ramp spells that I saw in this deck, and when I say spells, I do mean, artifacts, enchantments, all that stuff as well, whatnot. When it's on the stack, it's a spell. Very low 6 card draw spells, and I was sort of also counting some recursion cards there as well, just as sort of, card advantage again. So it's very low. Single target removal is about 4 or 5 thereabouts. That's not too bad either. Just being about 4 or 5. But I did notice that a couple of them were a little bit weird in my opinion. But they certainly sort of put more budget sort of options in these decks more so than anything else. So that's sort of where I can see the budget sort of run thin on some of these things. They don't want to put too much good card draw in these decks. They don't want to put too much good removal in these decks. Board wipes, just the one. That interested me, but I think kind of this deck's a little bit different than some other decks because it's a very political deck for the most part, so you're not relying too much on board wipes. You really just want to be as political as possible and as pillow-forted as possible so that you can just sort of, sit back and watch the chaos of other people killing each other, to a degree at least. It's very interesting in that regard. Number of new cards is 16, and the number of reprints are 64, and that does include the basic lands again as well. Total reprint value of $143 here in this deck. Now, again, that's not including any of the new cards or any of the Strixhaven cards, because even some of the ones that, again, the uncommons and whatnot might be worth only a few cents, whatever, 25 cents. you know, again, we just don't have the prices for anything from those sets, and we don't have prices for any of the cards, or if we do have prices, the prices are in flux, so that, really changes the, the value of where it is day to day, week to week, month to month, whatever, until the prices sort of settle down and people can actually get these cards in hand and whatnot. Alright, so cards that have a value of $2 or above, of course, again, Arcane Signet, Sol Ring, both of these cards, are always going to turn up, at just above, the $2 mark. So, if it's any deck, even I think the green decks all have Sol Ring, Arcane Signet. I don't know why they have them. It's a bit weird for them to have Arcane Signet. It's fine for them to have Sol Ring, I guess, but whatever. Even that I would just, if I was really tuning up the deck, I'd just take it out, at least in my opinion. But then again, Sol Ring is busted for a reason because it is really good. So a lot of people just play with it anyway, no matter what. Dead as an L, that hasn't had a reprint in a couple years, I think. So, it's nice to sort of see it here. It wasn't a huge value card, but it's still, $2 or so. Ghostly Prison, that was reprinted in the last couple of sets, I think, of Command decks. So that one's pretty good. Curse of Disturbance, this is one of the curses that you put onto a player, and when you attack them, you make 2/2 zombies. I didn't realize this card was actually worth as much as what it is. That certainly surprises me that it was, worth so much, and the price is so far up. I don't know why that really is. That's very odd to me. Tragic Arrogance. That's our board wipe that's in here. Our one board wipe. And Tragic Arrogance is a pretty good card. So, $3 or so there for that one. Other End, it's decent removal for a budget deck. I would certainly think about taking it out of this deck, though. Gideon, Champion of Justice as well. That's another card that would probably think about taking out. But again, if you don't really want to take some of these cards out when I start talking about them, again, like Other End, if you just want to stick to being like, well, I don't have the budget, or I don't have the ability that much to get too many more cards, I'll just keep it in, A couple more cards. Actually, we run out of room there on the last slide, so a couple more cards. Boros Charger, just gets your lands, pretty good. Selfless Squire, that's the flash creature that whenever you're going to take a bunch of damage, you can flash it in, and then it gets +1/+1 counters equal to the number of damage that you would have taken. Windborne Muse just, is Ghostly Prison on a stick. Deathbringer Liege, that's the old Orzhov card that basically gives all white creatures and all black creatures +1/+1. And it does something else. I can't quite remember exactly what it does. I think it does something with reanimation or whatnot, or something. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. Sunscorched Regent gets +1/+1 counters whenever people play spells and you gain 1 life. Quite a good dragon. So, good to see, that in here. Certainly, Deathbringer Liege hasn't been reprinted in a very long time, and the price on that certainly showing it's the most valuable card in this precon. So now we're going to start talking about this precon and what we're doing with this deck and how we're going to build, or how I'm going to suggest you sort of take cards out and put cards in, like I did with the last deck. I'm not going to actually build this deck. Again, I'm not going to build any of these decks. I'm not going to show you how to build this deck. Building this deck is up to you. You decide what you want to do. You decide what you can do based on your budget or based on what you have in your own collection. I can't tell you what to do. I can only offer suggestions based on saying, right, this is what this commander wants to do, and this is the suggestions that I would make. to build this deck. So this deck, it's kind of an oddball deck. This Commander Brina, the Dream Gorge, quite an interesting commander. And like I said, they have put a fair bit more synergy into this deck than what I was expecting them to sort of put in, but still, I don't know whether this is a Voltron deck. That's just the problem that I keep having, that I keep looking at this card and going, is this a Voltron deck? Is that really what you want to do with this deck? Or is this just a value card? Or is this just like a political deck? That's where I keep getting stuck with this, is trying to figure out, is this just like, what's its win condition? Like, that's the main thing. I guess if its win condition is that it is technically a Voltron deck. So in that way, we should dive into trying to build it into a Voltron deck. And again, I'm not going to read much of what this card does and whatnot that much. I'm talking about the synergies. If you want to know my thoughts and you want to hear me discuss this card and what it actually does and whatnot, all the synergies, whatnot, you can check out my Commander 21 video that's up on the channel. I'll even put a link in the cards above so that you can find what I'm talking about. You'll be able to easily find it on our channel here anyway, because it was recently updated, or uploaded rather. It's still in our EDH Geeks playlist, so it's still very easy to find us, even on a card for the last commander. Usually I'll put it up for all the commanders as well, so it should be fairly easy to find that video here on the channel if you want to have a bit more of an in-depth discussion about this. So we're diving more into what this deck wants to do, which is a little bit like here or there. It's hard to exactly pinpoint down what exactly this deck wants to do. So we really have to get into going, okay, let's break this down a little bit more, because it is doing a few things. And to me, I want to be doing one or two of these things for the most part. I really don't want to be going down too many different avenues. And as I sort of said, this deck, it seems like it just needs a fair few cards actually added to it. It just needs a lot of card draw added to it. And a few other things here and there. Just some of the cards in it aren't really that optimal or that good. But they're just here as bit players and whatnot. But before we start actually adding cards, we've really got to start cutting cards, or at least making a list of the cards that we want to think about cutting. So some of the first cards that we want to probably cut from this: Gideon, Champion of Justice. I know I was just sort of talking about Gideon, that he's, a couple of dollars or whatever in this deck and whatnot. That's cool, that's fine, that's great, but he's not really that good. We don't need him for anything really in this deck. Mainly I think people use him for his ult, which is a board wipe effect, and this deck is low on board wipes, and we might want more maybe, but to get to his ult is very unreliable, so I didn't really count it as a board wipe. So I just sort of think, if we really want it for that board wipe effect, we'll just run an actual board wipe, like the other things that he does don't really have much significance and aren't really good enough for what we want. Zatolpa, it's just a big flying dumb dinosaur. It doesn't really do much for this deck at all. If it actually did something for our deck, that would be great, like that Abzan counters deck or Abzan keywords deck that was floating around a few years ago. This would have been great in that deck, and it was in that deck, and it was great. So if we cared about keywords, or if we cared about the creature type, or if we cared about indestructible, if we cared about just big beaters and whatnot, then this would be really good. Taser, it actually sort of works with the plan of what this deck is doing, But there's one problem with Teysa. She's literally almost 1,000,000 mana, and by the time we're thinking about casting her, especially with sort of the limited ramp that we've got in this deck, the game's over. Literally, the game is over. We're not going to get to this card. We're never going to have it out long, or if we do get it out, we're never going to have it out long enough for it to really be relevant. And, if it is relevant, mostly it just means that we're dead. Really, because people are just going to punch us to kill us. So, that's how that's going to realistically work out. I do want to quickly pass over some of the lands that are in this deck again. Because it's pretty easy to cut some of the bad lands that are in this deck. Orzhov Basilica, I think you can find good replacements for this. There are just 100 dual lands that you can put in this place. Same with Study Hall. Yeah, there's 100 better dual lands, like I sort of said in the last video, that you can put in these places. Temple of the False God, it's a trap. Don't fall into that trap. Play something that actually taps for mana. Most of the time, just don't play this. So more cards that we want to cut. We will have to dig through some of the piles of stuff that we do want to cut. Stalking Leonin. Secretly choosing an opponent and then revealing the opponent and then getting to exile a attacking creature. If it was the named opponent, whatever. I think it's too many hoops to go around. It's just way too many hoops to go around to just exile a creature or whatever. If we want a creature exile removal, we'll just play, or just a removal spell, we'll just play another removal spell. This is too many hoops to go around. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to forget who you've selected unless you write it on a piece of paper. So you've always got to write it down and things like that. Especially some people say, oh, well, you didn't really choose me, now did you? You're just saying you chose me because now I'm attacking you. Things like that. So it's always one of those things where you've always got to have it written down and things like this. Deathbringer Regent. It just is a board wipe. And I didn't really count this as a board wipe again because it's so much mana. It's too much mana for a board wipe that we care about. And it doesn't do anything in our deck. It has no synergy with what we're doing, really. Soul Snare. Look, we can just do better than Soul Snare. Soul Snare is not very good. Angel of Serenity. Look, if we were in a Blink deck, we might want this. But I just don't think that we actually want this. It's too much mana for what it's doing, just getting rid of 2 things. We can't cheat it out like we could have cheated it out in like the other deck that we were talking about the other day. In that deck, there was reasons why we would have these other cards, some of those cards that are a lot of mana, because we can cheat them out of our graveyard and things like that, because they have specific synergy with, recursion and whatnot that our commander's doing. That's just not what our commander's doing. Spectral Searchlight, Victory Chimes. Again, I don't really think that this is a too much of a political deck. Yes, it is to a degree, and you could keep these in if you really, really want to and just use them on yourself. That's fine. But 3 mana rocks aren't that good. We can just take them out and put in things that are better and just benefit us. Again, you don't really care that much about this level of, like, oh, opponent, I'll give you a mana. We'll be friends and, whatnot. It's not really worth doing. Infernal Offering, it's kind of a cute card, and that's the problem with it. It's a cute card that maybe once in a blue moon you'll get off and an opponent will actually do this with you, but again, it's a lot of mana to invest. If you want to return some creatures from your graveyard, I think you just run a spell that actually says return some creatures from your graveyard instead of like trying to tempting offer people. It's just not really worth it. Coveted Jewel as well. Just, I think, yes, the political value of this card is good. But again, it's a lot of mana. The card draw on it is nice, but that's about it. Like 6 mana for 3 cards, though, isn't a very good rate. It does give you 3 mana back, but again, just by the time you're sort of casting this sort of card, it's just sort of a very underwhelming sort of card. Guardian Archon, same with sort of stalking Leonin. You just don't really it's just not really worth it. It's not worth it to play this sort of a card. It's just going to take up too much. Again, it's a lot of mana. It doesn't really do that much. And again, you get into that whole oh, you didn't really choose me, or you didn't really choose that player. It's just you decided to choose that player now because blah 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 things. So it always comes to an argument and things like this. So I find a lot of these cards, unless you've written it down and you've got that piece of paper to say, hey, look, I've got the proof, say this is what I said, whatnot. Again, want to get into cards that we actually want to add. Actually, I will quickly touch on this because I actually forgot last time. Silverquill's Campus. All the campuses, they're just fine. But again, if you want to and you can remove it, then I would remove it. It's not that good. The pay for to scry is just okay. It's just fine. If you get into a sticky situation, you can scry every few turns and whatnot. It is a lot of mana to do it, but it is worth it if you're literally top decking, in that sort of scenario, and you can get some free value out of your land. That's just fine. I think if you find other cards to take out of this deck and you need to put some more dual lands in, take out some basics. There's always too many basics in these sort of decks. So we're going to start with lands, or at least some of the lands. Vault of Champions, Godless Shrine. Of course, if you have these, again, they're not in everyone's binder or they're not in everyone's collection, I know, but they're very good. If you have the budget as well for them, get them. If you don't have them, they're always useful. They're always good. Same with some of these other cards. Guildless Commons, always good. Silent Clearing, also very good. Again, it's somewhat expensive, but Silent Clearing is very good. As well as Isolated Chapel's very good. So if you can get your hands on an Isolated Chapel, that's very good. Now, one utility land that I wanted to discuss is Rogue's Passage. Now, this is where we're kind of making a firm decision. You have to make that decision. I'm not making that decision. If you want to go Voltron, you need Rogue's Passage in this deck. And you probably need a whole bunch of other cards in this deck if you want to go Voltron with this commander. But especially Rogue's Passage, you definitely want Rogue's Passage if you're going to go Voltron. And it's a pretty cheap card to get. So, I wouldn't be too worried to try to find myself one of these to pick up. Alright, so now we're going to get into more of the meat of the deck and what the deck's trying to do. Again, we're looking for things that give us benefits for attacking or for hitting our opponents and can protect our commander or can protect our creatures and can also protect us. And we also kind of want to get our commander to be bigger. Now, some of the cards that are in this deck are very good, very powerful, and certainly worth the time in keeping. It's sort of hard to keep some of the cards that we want to keep, and it's sort of hard to decide exactly where we're at in taking or in putting certain cards in. But again, we've got to make some of those decisions, and it's not so much like I sort of say sometimes that the cards that we're going to take out are bad, or that the cards that we're going to get put in are, you know, the best cards in the universe. No, we're just saying this is the strategy, this is the idea of this deck. And again, we're probably going in that Voltron direction for the most part. You don't really care about what your opponents are doing. In my opinion, this is just me. So all the impetus cards and all the vowel cards that are in this deck, there's 6 of them, I believe. I know there's 4. There's 2 of each. 1 impetus and 2 impetus and 2 vowels. Sorry, dyslexia. So they each give your creature a buff, or give the enchanted creature a buff, and whenever whenever it attacks, basically you do something, and it says it's goaded or it can't attack you or whatever. So those cards, you know, are really good. You know, because what you want to do is not really put them on your opponent's creatures. Just in my opinion, if you want to play the political game and you want to put it on other people's creatures, well and good. But I don't think these enchantments are the best. But again, they're there. But I think if you want to use them, you want to use them on your commander. So, you know, if you want to keep these in, you can keep these in. But I would suggest more focusing in on equipments, because equipments will stay around if your commander does die. And you do want equipments that will give you added benefits like what the commander wants to do, which is get +1/+1 counters and things like that. So we are looking for things that don't just give us a buff, which is nice, but we also want to get +1/+1 counters if we can. So again, we probably want Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots in this sort of deck. We might want, Whisper Silk Cloak. That's really good. That's probably a card that we would really want in this deck. Definitely. Trailblazer's Boots also. Basic, non-basic land walk. A lot of people play non-basics except for mono-color decks, but even they play some amount of non-basics as utility lands, so that's quite a good card. It is a little bit more expensive, but it is really good. So if we can find a Trailblazer's Boots as well, we probably want that. There's the Key to the City, which basically, does give our commander or a creature unblockable. So we might want some of these equipment like Armory of Eroas, Ring of Thune, and Ring of Zathrid. All of these basically put +1/+1 counters onto our commander. Our commander is white, so Ring of Thune works. Our commander is black, so Ring of Zathrid does work. And, Armory of Eroas just, puts counters on it, so it doesn't really matter about anything else. Sword of Truth and Justice. Now, this is another card, really great card. It is a bit expensive, so it might be out of the budget for some people, but I think it's really worth it if you can find the budget for it. beyond that, I sort of think that we've sort of got to the point where we actually just need to look at our mana situation, our removal situation, and this deck's in a very good position, I think, for the most part, except for one part, which is card draw. So we'll have to get to that kind of in a minute, but, you know, beyond, like, you know, some serious, like, what are we going to do moments, I think the rest of this deck actually is quite good for what we actually want to be doing. I don't think that some of the cards like, you know, Scorch Region or anything like this are that good in a way, because we don't really care about anything else for the most part. We only care about our commander. We just want to protect our commander. That's it. That's the thing that we have real interest in this deck. So yeah, you know, we've pretty much come to the end of this deck upgrade suggestions here for today, guys. You know, I really wanted to dig through some of these cards to try to figure this deck out myself, just, you know, to understand what this deck was all about, because it is a hard deck to sort of figure out what you really want to do with this. And I sort of went down the path of going, well, this seems like we want to care about our commander a lot, so therefore we want to be Voltron. Now, you don't have to build it that way. Again, this is why I give you guys the options. You might want to build it one way or another way. You might want to go, oh, well, I just want to attack my opponents with my stuff, get some counters sometimes, you know, and it's got that counter sub theme. I still think a lot of the cards that I've been suggesting here, even if you're not going into Voltron strategy, if you add some of the cards that, you know, give your creatures +1/+1 counters, you know, and whatnot, make them bigger, make them more threatening, do stuff and whatnot when, you know, you can, and just again, I'm going to toss in any card draw that you can find. Most of it's going to be in black. Just toss in some Swords and Plowshares and some other staples and whatnot that, you know, are of course obvious to these colors. So, you know, that's pretty much it. Did you like this deck tech or this deck upgrade guide? Let me know. You know, I try to do more and more of these deck takes. There's always more decks to do every year and whatnot, so I do try to do my best to try to do these videos, and I do try to tailor it towards you guys, what you guys want. I try to just give suggestions as to what I think, you know, would be fun to play. You know, some people don't like Voltron, some people do. It's neither here nor there for me to tell you how you should play the game or whatever. If you find it fun, you find it fun. I don't particularly find it that much fun, but that's not for me to say, hey, people shouldn't play this way. You know, if somebody finds Voltron really fun, then hey, they should be allowed to play that way as well. And, you know, just we all want to have fun and play the game, so, you know, what's wrong with that? But anyway, guys, let me know what you're interested in building with this deck. Are you interested in building it as a political deck? What would you add into this deck? Let me know right down in there the comments below. Please remember that the success of channels like this is based on viewers like you, so please consider liking, sharing and subscribing if you would like to support this content. You can also get social with us on our Discord and on our Facebook. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon. All links are in the description. Thank you for your support. It really means a lot. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today. And if you have, I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.